For today's video, we're going to be using this mold. And what I mean by an unusually shaped mold is that the cavity is not like, for example, in this mold, it's just a square. So you just make your design a square. And you could do this with this mold, just put a square design on top and you would get something like this piece. But although I really like this piece, you can't quite see the heart indent or the heart cavity that's in there. Another thing that you can do with a mold like this is to actually cut out a heart out of a piece of glass. And with that, you get actually two pieces. So I've done it before where I cut out the heart and I used the outside on my piece and I just backed it with another color and then I slumped it and you get something like this. But with a piece like that, you also need to get some relief scores in order to be able to get the heart out of your piece. So there's slight breaks in the piece and you can't really see them, but I know that they're there, so it kind of, I don't know, it's not my favorite thing to do. But you also get a secondary piece out of this, which is the piece that's on the inside, and then I got to do another piece as well, which is this one. My favorite thing to do actually with something like this that has an unusual shape is to trace the piece using frit. You can use frit, you can use scrap, you can use powder frit, coarse frit, whatever frit you want. In this project, I'm going to be using powder frit to create my images, and I'm going to be doing it two ways. I'm going to be using the powder frit to define the outside and leave the inside white and have it slump in, and use the powder frit to define the inside and slump that in. These pieces are, like, as you can see, they're rainbow pieces and they were made for Pride Month, and I do sell these on my website, and any proceeds made from these pieces go to a donation to the Trevor Project, which helps LGBTQ+ youth. As you saw in the intro, I'm going to be doing two designs today. One where we decorate the piece of glass that's going to sink into this cavity, and one where we're going to decorate the part of the glass that stays flat on top. So how do we do this? To start off, I get a piece of transparency. I get a piece of transparent plastic, and I'm going to put it down here, and I'm going to turn my mold over on top of it. And I'm going to trace around it with a Sharpie. Normally I'd do this with a mold that's new and not one that's already covered in release agent, because it gets everywhere. And I have made this template before, but since I'm doing it for the video, it's already covered. So then I flip the mold over and I put my traced lines, I align it to the mold, and then I take my Sharpie again and I trace the contour of the cavity. Using a craft knife, I'm going to cut this out. when you cut the inside piece, make sure that you don't cut through the outside piece, or you don't cut through the inside piece. You want both pieces to be intact because you're going to want them to be able to nest back into each other. There we go. We now have two pieces that are still perfectly intact. I'm going to clean them off, and we're going to start working with our powders. So my mold measures 4.5 inches in width, either way. And I cut my pieces of glass at 4.25 inches because I want it to fit into the mold and not go beyond the mold. Also, because I'm going to be adding frit powder to this, and I'm going to be fusing two pieces of glass together, the 6mm rule might expand this piece a bit because I'm going beyond 6mm by adding the frit powder. And so by cutting these a little smaller, I ensure that I won't make it any bigger than 4.5 because I don't want it to drape over the edges of my mold. So on one of my white pieces of Tack, I'm going to use this piece where I'm going to then cover the inside here with frit powder. On the other one, I'm going to be using the other piece, and I'll cover it up, and I will cover the outside with frit powder. But for the one that I'm going to do on the outside, I want to ensure that my piece is properly centered to the mold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit of gel and put it on the inside here, center my transparency to my piece of glass, so you see my 4 corners hit the corners, and then take this piece and place it back where it's supposed to be, right here. Make sure it's properly aligned and nested back into its original spot. And then I could remove this one. And so I'm going to be using this piece to do the outside. I'm going to cover the transparency and the outside with some gel, especially the edges of the transparency. This way, when I remove the transparency, I get nice crisp edges. And with the gel underneath the powder will stick. And whatever powder comes on the transparency on the stencil will stay on the stencil when I remove it, those lines will be nice and clean and crisp. Going to do the same with this one. It's going to be a little easier. I just need to center it to my piece of glass. Cover the inside and the edges of the outside of the heart with some gel. You don't need a lot. This also ensures that your stencil doesn't move around as you're working. On one of the other two pieces, what I did is I traced lines where I want to do my bands of color. It'll just make it easier for me to evenly distribute it. And then the fourth piece is going to stay white. As an added measure, I'll just cover this lightly in gel as well so that my frit doesn't go too crazy. Or someone opens a window and it all blows away, because believe me, it has happened before. I was the one who opened the window. So off camera, all of my pieces are elevated on a little cup, so it's going to be easier for me to manipulate and move them around. So the frit powders that I'm going to be using are red, tangerine orange, canary yellow, pea pod, periwinkle, and plum striker. So this looks really light, but it's a striker. That means it's going to have a much stronger color once it's subjected to heat. And these are all opalescent powders. And those that have watched my videos before, you know the drill. When I'm using powders, I like to put a sheet down and a little cup to elevate my work. I'm going to be putting a breathing mask on because the powders are glass powders and you don't want that to go into your lungs. So I'm going to start with this piece, and I'm going to be using my medium sifter. So I'm going to eyeball this, and for this one I'm going to start on the bottom. So this piece is all ready to go. Nothing more needs to be done decoration wise. It still needs to go in the kiln for a tack fuse, just to adhere these powders to the piece of glass. So I'm just going to move this out of the way. This piece, we're just going to gently pick up and move the stencil. This looks, in my humble opinion, really pretty. Before we even, I mean, the pastel colors are really nice, but once we tack fuse them, they're going to be nice and bright, hopefully. This piece is going to be a little trickier to pick up. So I'm going to grab a piece of tape, fold it on itself, stick one edge down, fold it on itself, and stick the other edge down. Try to do it in 2 spots. I should have really done this before I added the frit. then use this to lift the stencil off. Okay, did a little bit of damage, but that's fine. Nothing that can't be fixed. We have that bit of gel in the center, and I don't want to leave it there, so I'm going to very carefully wipe it off. Sometimes, although it usually burns off in the kiln, sometimes it causes some devitrification, which is some haziness at the surface. Here are the 3 pieces covered in frit powder. I added a bit at the edges if it got knocked off. I made sure when I was sifting the colors on to overlap them, so this way they blend a little better. And they're going to go in for a tack fuse. Our 3 pieces have come out of the kiln, and look at how bright they are. Now that the powder has tack fused, the colors are super, super bright. I hadn't ever used this purple before or this orange, and I'm happy how everything came out. So these are the 3 pieces that we tack fused. So the negative space heart, the full rainbow, and the inside heart. So the purpose of this design is that once it's slumped, the heart will be indented in the little dish. And the same with this one. And my design concept is the inside matches the outside. So this piece, since the inside is the rainbow, will be matched with this fully rainbow piece. And I'll match the sides that have the red together and the purple, so it looks like it's a continuation. So these 2 will be fully fused together, and then continuing with that theme of the inside matching the outside, this one will just have the white on the outside. And you'll see that I had pre-cut this white when I had cut all of these, and it's a little larger because these pieces during the tack fuse lost a bit of their size. But that's okay, and especially since this piece is not completely straight, but during the full fuse it'll just write itself out. So these are going to be fused, the white background with the white inside, and the rainbow background with the rainbow inside. Here are beautiful pieces out of the kiln, and I love the shine after the full fuse. I love the shine that they have. What I also like is if you look on the edge, I mean the frit kind of came off the edge a bit here and here, but I find that it gives it a bit of a spray painted effect. Like, it doesn't look like glass, it looks like it got spray painted. So that's kind of cool. So here's our mold again, and I recovered it with some boron nitride because of all the manipulation that we did at the beginning to do the stencil. Some of the boron nitride came off, and if there's no release agent on the mold, then the glass will stick to it. So this is the final step, and you see the size is now perfect for the mold. So our calculations were correct. And make sure when you're since this is the final step and there's no going back after this, make sure when you're placing your piece on your unusually shaped mold that your image matches the cavity, because you don't want to put it this way and then all the work you've done is for naught. So this will go this way in the mold, and I only have one mold for this piece, so I'm gonna have to do 2 different firings to finish it up, but that's it. So here are our finished pieces, and as I stated earlier, my design concept was that the inside matches the outside. So you'll see this one has the heart in the cavity, so on the inside, and it matches the back, which is the outside. So if you also look at the piece sideways, you see the inside and the outside are the same. And then with this one as well, the inside was white, the outside was white, and if you look at it sideways, it matches as well. And I hope you liked this project, and if you did, please give this video a like. I would love to hear your comments, to hear what you thought about this project, and if you do use some of my ideas in your projects, please tag me. I'd love to see what you guys are working on. I have a few new subscribers this week, so that's always awesome, and if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. And to finish off this video, I'll leave you with a few pictures.